Welcome back to Python tutorials for complete beginners, from boring people. In this video, we will learn about data types, and how to convert between different data types. Before diving in, appreciate your thumbs up to support the channel. In earlier videos, we called out that text written between quotes in Python is called a string. In programming terminology, a string is known as a data type. Most programs need to manipulate some kind of data, and that data can come in a lot of different types. A string is only one kind of data type found in Python. There's a bunch of others, like an integer which represents whole numbers without a fraction, like 1, 2, -3. Or a float, which represents a number with a fractional part like 0.5, 1.5 or -2.5. Generally, your computer doesn't know how to mix different data types. For example, adding two integers together makes perfect sense to computers, like this. Adding together two strings also makes sense. We just end up with the longer strings that contains the two, like so. But your computer doesn't know how to add an integer and a string. If you tell it to mix these two different data types, your computer isn't going to know what to do and will raise an error. Check it out. Oh no, our first error. Errors are a common part of programming, and you'll probably have to deal with them a lot. The trick is to think of errors as little clues from your computer to help you improve your programming skills. Read the errors carefully, understand what they're telling you, and then use that new knowledge to help you fix the mistake. In this example, the last line of the error message shows us that we've encountered something called a type error. When we get a bit of explanatory texts, that tells us that the plus sign can't be used between an int type and a string type, which are short names for integer and string. Thinking about what we've already learned about strings, integers, and mixing data types, can you guess what the error is trying to tell us? The message unsupported operand type tells us that we can't add the integer 7 and the string 8, because they're different data types. But what if you didn't have an instructor to helpfully pointed that out? You'd need to use your research skills. For example, you could look for information about the error by pasting the type error message into the search bar of Google. This is a common trick used by almost everyone learning to code, and even by experienced developers. You'll usually find that other people on the internet have reported similar errors and solved them too. Back to our example. Maybe you're thinking, aren't we adding two numbers here? Looks a bit like it. Well, look carefully and remember that anything wrapped in quotation marks is considered a string in Python. So 8 is a string here, while 7 is an integer. If you're ever not 100% sure what data types a certain value is, Python gives you a handy way to find out. You can use the type function to have the computer tell you the type. This might come in handy when dealing with code that someone else wrote and you're not sure what data types it's using. For example, this tells us that a belongs to type street, which like we said earlier is short for string. 8 with the quotes also belong to type string. The number 7 belongs to type int, which is short for integer. And 2.5 belongs to type float. Previously, we saw how we cannot use the plus operator between an integer and a string because they're different data types. But what happens when we try to operate with an integer and a float instead? Let's find out. Error-free. Python has no problem performing this operation. But what's up with that? Aren't integer and a float two different data types? They sure are, but there's a lot happening under the hood here. Behind the scenes, the computer is busy automatically converting our integer 7 into a float 7. This lets Python then add together the values to return results that is also a float. We call this process implicit conversion. The interpreter automatically converts one data type into another. Another notable point about Python operation is that Python operations are not just restricted to numbers. That means, besides adding multiple numbers together, Python also allows you to add many strings together. This lets you do things like create sentences from individual words. Like this. Just don't forget to add spaces to each words. Otherwise, the computer will run them all together. So what if you really want to combine a string and a number? Is it possible? It sure is, but only with an explicit conversion. In Python, to convert between one data type and another, we call a function with the name of the type we're converting to. Let's see how this works. Back to our previous example, how to fix this expression of adding a number 7 to a string 8. There are two ways to fix this. We need to either explicitly convert the number 7 to the string 7 using the street function, or explicitly convert the string 8 to the integer 7 using the int function. Let's look at another example. In this script, we're first calculating the area of a triangle, and when printing it we're adding it to a string. To do this, we need to call the street function to convert a number into a string. Let's execute it and check out what happens. Our number got converted to a string and print it together with the message. So now you know 3 very common data types in Python. There are plenty of others you'll be using soon. As we continue through the course, we'll come across more data types and learn how to interact with each of them. For now, just remember, mixing your data types will get your computer mixed up. So keep your strings with your strings, your numbers with your numbers, and you be fine. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and comment if you find this video useful. And subscribe for more future videos.